In the vast gallery of legendary figures in history, few compare to the imposing stature of Goliath, the biblical giant. This colossus, champion of the Philistines, was not just an ordinary warrior, he was a walking war machine. Imagine, if you can, a man over 9 feet tall. Today, such a height would be extraordinary, but in ancient times, it was simply unbelievable. Goliath wasn't just tall, he was a human mountain, capable of making the ground tremble beneath his feet. But size was just the beginning. Dressed for battle, Goliath transformed into a mobile fortress. His bronze helmet gleamed in the sun, while a coat of mail, weighing an incredible 125 pounds, covered his massive body. Bronze greaves protected his legs, and a spear of absurd proportions completed his arsenal. The shaft of this weapon was comparable to a weaver's beam, and its iron point weighed about 15 pounds, more than many entire swords. As if that wasn't enough, Goliath had his own shield-bearer, a man whose sole function was to carry a giant shield in front of him. Imagine the psychological impact. Even before seeing the giant, enemies encountered a shield the size of a person. For 40 long days, Goliath stood between the two armies, issuing a challenge that echoed through the valleys. Why line up entire armies for battle? Send your best man to fight me. If he wins, we'll be your slaves. But if I triumph, you'll serve us. This tactic, known as representative combat, was common at the time. A duel between champions could decide the fate of entire nations, sparing countless lives. But who would dare face such a monster? As the stalemate dragged on, the story takes us to a very different scene. In the peaceful hills of Judah, near Bethlehem, a young shepherd named David tended his father's flock, oblivious to the drama unfolding on the battlefield. David was too young for the army and probably didn't even know about the ongoing conflict. His only connection to the war was his 3 older brothers, who served under King Saul's orders. It was then that fate intervened in the form of a paternal request. At the dawn of a new day, David set out on his mission, leaving the flock in the care of another shepherd. With supplies in hand, he headed to the Israelite camp, following his father Jesse's instructions. As he approached, an impressive scene unfolded before his eyes. The army was preparing for battle, the air vibrating with war cries. Curious, David ran to the front lines, eager to find his brothers. But fate had other plans. While talking to his brothers, a deafening roar echoed through the valley. It was Goliath, the Philistine giant, issuing his daily challenge. The effect was instant. Israelite soldiers, experienced warriors, ran to hide in their tents, overcome by fear. Imagine the scene. David, a young shepherd, witnessing for the first time the terror that had plagued Israel's army for 40 days. Before him, a colossus covered in armor, his thunderous voice not only threatening the soldiers but blaspheming against the very God of Israel. Indignation boiled in David's heart. Turning to the soldiers around him, he questioned, "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? What will be given to the man who defeats him and removes this disgrace from Israel?" David's words, full of courage and faith, reached King Saul's ears. Brought before the monarch, David declared with conviction, "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. I, your servant, will go and fight him." Saul, though skeptical, decided to give the young man a chance. He dressed David in his own royal armor, but the weight and rigidity were too much for the agile shepherd. "I cannot go in these," David explained, "because I am not used to them." Instead, he opted for his familiar tools, a staff, a sling, and 5 smooth stones from a nearby stream. The contrast couldn't be greater. On one side, Goliath, a mountain of muscle and metal. On the other, David, a young shepherd armed with simple tools and unshakable faith. When Goliath saw his opponent, his reaction was pure disdain. "Am I a dog," he roared, "that you come at me with sticks?" His words, laden with insults and curses, echoed across the battlefield. But David remained unwavering. With a clear and firm voice he replied, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands." Imagine the scene. David, a young shepherd, facing a giant wearing 200 pounds of armor. His only weapons? A simple sling and a stone. The contrast couldn't be more dramatic. As Goliath advanced, David didn't hesitate. With surprising agility, he ran toward the battle line. In a fluid motion, he took a stone from his bag and slung it. The impact was precise and devastating. The stone sank into the giant's forehead, bringing him down. But David didn't stop there. Without wasting time, he ran to Goliath's fallen body. In a display of courage and cunning, he used the giant's own sword to behead him, sealing his victory unquestionably. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The Philistines, seeing their champion defeated, fled in panic. What had seemed like a lost battle turned into a triumphant pursuit. The Israelites, inspired by David's courage, advanced with war cries, chasing the Philistines to the gates of Ekron. This story, more than a simple battle account, became a powerful symbol of courage, faith, and the ability to overcome seemingly impossible challenges. But Goliath's story raises intriguing questions. Who was he really? Some scholars suggest he could have been a Nephilim, a race of giants mentioned in ancient scriptures. Others argue he was a Rephate, since the Nephilim would have been destroyed in Noah's great flood. The Rephates, mentioned about 20 times in the Bible, were known for their extraordinary size. A notable example is Og, king of Bashan, whose bed measured an impressive 13 feet long. There are fascinating theories about Goliath's origin. Some experts believe the Philistines descended from the Anakim, a race of giants. Gath, Goliath's hometown, was known as an important Anakim center, reinforcing the idea that he was an elite warrior of a special lineage. Modern researchers even suggest genetic explanations for Goliath's gigantism, such as autosomal dominant inheritance, which could result in conditions like familial acromegaly or gigantism. The story doesn't end with Goliath. The Bible mentions his 4 brothers, each as impressive as him: Lami, Saph, Ishbi-Benob, and an unnamed 4th brother, notable for having 6 fingers on each hand and foot. Each of them wielded weapons of colossal proportions, continuing the legacy of their fallen brother. This lineage of giants persisted, defying the Israelites even after Goliath's death. In a subsequent battle, we find Ishbi-Benob, one of the brothers, seeking revenge. At that crucial moment, Abishai son of Zeruiah came to the scene. With extraordinary courage, he came to David's aid, confronting and defeating the giant Ishbi-Benob. This heroic act not only saved the king's life but also marked a turning point. From that day on, David's men swore that he would no longer accompany them in battle, fearing to lose the lamp of Israel. Abishai, the firstborn of Zeruiah, David's sister, was more than a simple warrior. His loyalty and bravery were legendary. It was he who accompanied David on a daring mission to Saul's camp, where they subtly took the sleeping king's spear and water jug. During Absalom's rebellion, Abishai took command of one of the 3 main divisions of David's forces, proving his worth as a military leader. Ishbi-Benob's story, though brief, is a powerful reminder of the constant dangers leaders like David faced on the battlefield. More than that, it's a testimony to loyalty and friendship, personified in Abishai's quick action to save his king. But the challenges didn't end there. The Bible tells us about Saph, another descendant of the Rephate giants from the Philistine city of Gath. In an epic battle, Saph met his end at the hands of Sibbecai the Hushathite, one of David's elite warriors. Sibbecai, known for his strength and skill, was one of David's 30 mighty men. The saga continues with Elhanan son of Jair, who defeated Lami, Goliath's brother. The description of Lami's spear, compared to a weaver's beam, is not mere hyperbole. This vivid comparison emphasizes the robustness and extraordinary size of the weapon, contrasting it with common spears of the time. These narratives of triumph over the Philistines demonstrate that Israel could defeat great enemies even without David's direct presence. These brave individuals accomplished remarkable feats after David had stopped facing giants personally. Lami's story, though not directly named, teaches us a powerful lesson about humility, a silent strength that even the mightiest giants couldn't comprehend. Some scholars argue that Goliath and his brothers were not Nephilim, but rather Rephates, descendants of an ancient race of giants. This interpretation suggests that the Nephilim were destroyed in the flood during Noah's time, with only Noah's family surviving. The Bible mentions that only Og, king of Bashan, remained as a remnant of the giants. Many experts believe the Philistines were descendants of the Anakim, which would reinforce the idea of Goliath as an elite warrior, considering that Gath, his hometown, was an important Anakim center. Some researchers suggest that Goliath's family lineage may indicate a genetic pattern known as autosomal dominant inheritance, possibly explaining his extraordinary stature. Regardless of their exact origin, these giants found in Canaan were defeated by the Israelites during their conquest. The origin of the Nephilim, mentioned in the Bible, is a topic that has fascinated and intrigued scholars and readers for centuries. These mysterious beings arose from the union between the sons of God and the daughters of men, a passage that has generated various interpretations over time. 3 main theories attempt to explain who these sons of God were. The first, popular in the early church, suggests they were fallen angels who rebelled against God and united with human women. Another interpretation sees them as powerful leaders or kings who married common women. The third proposes they were pious descendants of Seth, son of Adam and Eve, who mixed with the ungodly lineage of Cain. The idea that the sons of God were fallen angels finds support in other biblical passages. In Job, for example, we see mentions of the sons of God presenting themselves before the Lord, including Satan among them. This interpretation gains strength when we consider that Genesis clearly contrasts the sons of God with the men, as suggesting beings of a distinct nature. The presence of the Nephilim on earth, described as heroes of old, men of renown, seems to have been one of the factors that led God to decide on the flood. This cataclysmic event was a response to the great wickedness that had spread among humanity in Noah's days. It's moving to realize how God, in his infinite wisdom and love, felt grieved by the corruption of his creation. The biblical text reveals to us a God who is deeply saddened by our sins, longing for our well-being. In the midst of this darkness emerges the figure of Noah, a righteous and blameless man. His selection to build the ark was not by merit, but by grace, a concept that echoes through the ages to our days. The story of Noah and his sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth illustrates how God, instead of exterminating all of humanity, chose to preserve a remnant. Interestingly, even after the flood, there are indications that the fallen angels may have repeated their acts, albeit on a smaller scale. The reports of Israelite spies about giants in Canaan fuel this possibility, although they may have been exaggerations born of fear. The biblical narrative shows us that throughout history the Israelites faced and overcame these giants. The story of Lami, Goliath's brother, teaches us a powerful lesson about humility, a strength that often goes unnoticed but overcomes even the most formidable adversaries. These stories, filled with supernatural elements and epic conflicts, are not mere fantastic tales. They carry profound truths about human nature, our relationship with the divine, and the consequences of our choices. They reflect the eternal struggle between good and evil, human fragility, and the strength that comes from faith. As we contemplate these ancient narratives, we are invited to reflect on our own journey. What lessons can we extract from these millennial stories? How do they apply to the battles we face today, not against physical giants, but against the moral and spiritual challenges of our era?